you?
No. Do you?
Dr. Jones! No more parachutes!
As far as failures go, it sounds as though Indiana Jones and the Dial of Decidedly Shitty Storytelling is Kathleen Kennedy's magnum opus. How's it going, me hearties? I am the dreaded space pirate Dr. Disaster, and today we are going to discuss the abysmal box office projections for the upcoming 5th Indiana Jones movie. It's gotten so bad with all the terrible news for Lucasfilm lately that I've damn near started to feel sorry for Kathleen Kennedy. But then, of course, I remember the following clip, and my pity is destroyed almost as swiftly as the promises she made to the Grandmaster himself, George Lucas.
It's a very big universe I've created, and there's a lot of stories that are sitting in there.
The main thing is to protect these characters, make sure that they still continue to live in the way that you created them, and that the universe of Star Wars continues to grow.
Liar!
Indiana Jones 5 is what Kathleen Kennedy deserves. Just yesterday, a few weeks after the Cannes Film Festival where Indiana Jones 5 was lambasted by the critics subjected to it, the box office projections for Dial of Destiny dropped like a rock.
Man, you are one pathetic loser.
We're going to have a look at these updated projections, and then using those projections, we can make a pretty decent guess based on historical precedent as to what this movie ends up making at the box office overall. But what's your prediction? Drop your prediction in the comment section. How much will Indiana Jones and the Dial of Decidedly Shitty Storytelling pull in at the box office? How much money will Disney lose from this movie? Hopefully this film earns Kathleen Kennedy the prize which the free market has picked out for her, but which Disney has refused to give her for far too long.
Ding, ding, ding! What do we have for her, Johnny?
You're fired!
Alright, let's have a look at the box office projections. This article comes from Bounding Into Comics, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny opening weekend box office predictions plummet over 25%. The predicted opening weekend box office tracking numbers for Lucasfilm's upcoming Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny film took a huge hit. At the beginning of this month, box office tracking website Box Office Pro predicted the film would have an opening weekend domestic gross between $81 million and $111 million. The outlet explained they believed the film was getting positive social media chatter, nostalgia would drive moviegoers to the film, families would turn out for it, and early pre-sales are respectable. Counterpoint, I'm not sure who the target audience is for this film. The nostalgia of seeing Indiana Jones on the screen again will only appeal to an older audience, and many of us have been burned by what they've done to Star Wars to the point where we aren't interested anymore. And also, that nostalgia will have a hard time triggering with an 80-year-old Harrison Ford slugging it out with the Germans. And let me just say this, there are two kinds of people in this world. There's the kind who are instantly repelled by screeching harpies like Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Those people won't want to hear the feminist screeching. And there are the people who think screeching harpies are stunning and brave. And those people won't want to watch a film starring an old white man. So tell me again, who is this movie for? Anyway, let's see what else they have to say. The article continues, however, they did note the film received poor critic reviews. The franchise already has a monkey on its back, with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull dividing audiences, and it has a ton of competition, including Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning, Part 1, and Oppenheimer. Pamela McClintock writes, Disney and 20th Century's long-awaited next installment in the action-adventure franchise is pacing to open to $60 million to $70 million over the June 30th through July 2nd weekend, according to early tracking. That means the film's original predicted box office grosses from Box Office Pro have declined 25% on the low end and nearly 37% on the high end. To put this in perspective, the film is tracking worse than 2008's Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull without even factoring in inflation. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull had an opening weekend of $100.1 million domestically. The movie went on to gross $317.7 million domestically and another $469.5 million internationally, for a global gross of $786.6 million. This is really not good news for Disney. Not when you factor in the cost of making this film. Remember, it reportedly had a production budget of $300 million. They will spend, at a minimum, $100 million on marketing, which is Disney's bare minimum on major films. That means they have invested $400 million into this movie at a minimum by the time all is said and done. Now, I've talked about this ad nauseum, but I will say it one more time for the people in the back. Indiana Jones 5 will need $800 million at the box office just to break even with this thing. The crackheads and mouth breathers out there always try to argue that these Disney films with bloated budgets did really well because they only factor in what the movie grosses. They don't take into account that roughly half of all funds from movie tickets go to the theaters. I mean, how do you think the employees at theaters get paid, people? They have to get paid. This isn't slave labor. With this in mind, let's make an educated prediction. Assuming best case scenario for this movie, and Indy 5 hits the high end of the forecast and makes $70 million on the opening weekend. Keep in mind that most films drop between 50% and 70% in their second weekend unless there's strong word of mouth. Considering that the Rotten Tomatoes score is so abysmal, and considering the general bad will of the fandom that Lucasfilm has engendered, my guess is that this will be a bad drop. But for the sake of argument, let's assume it only drops 50% and pulls in $35 million. At that point, domestically, they will have made only $105 million in 2 weeks. Even if there were no further drop-offs in the following weekends, which there almost assuredly will be, but once again, just for the sake of argument, if there were no further drop-offs, it would still take a month for this movie to hit $200 million domestically. That is wretched. And I don't think it's far from reality to expect them to pull in between $200 million and $225 million domestically. If we look at Kingdom of the Crystal Skull's box office numbers, you can see that the domestic box office was roughly 2/3 of the international box office. If the ratio stays true, which I would argue is unlikely because I think that this will be a massive stinker internationally. I think there's a chance that this will look like The Little Mermaid on the international box office market, because I think that internationally people are getting sick of Western propaganda filling their movie theaters. They are sick of all of these disgusting Western ideas hitting their screens. The enchantment is done. Hollywood's power is waning. People outside of the United States are really sick of our shit. But once again, for the sake of argument, if the ratio stays true, let's look at the best case scenario. With that ratio, internationally, the movie will make between $300 and $335 million for a total box office range of, get this, between $500 million and $560 million. This means the best case scenario sees Disney losing $120 million on Indiana Jones, an intellectual property that was once one of the most beloved franchises in cinema. Lucasfilm has flushed it all down the toilet. I will leave you with this. If you were Disney, if you were Bob Iger, and you were scrambling for cash, and Lucasfilm kept producing massive financial disasters, what would you do? Kathleen Kennedy has to go, my dudes. She's burned all the bridges. She's ruined Star Wars, she's ruined Willow, now she's ruined Indiana Jones. This will never get better with her around. Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your captain is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty of booty.